News Today.
Welcome back. We are once again joined in studio by Dr. Chandler James, Assistant Professor for Political Science at the University of Oregon. We're today taking a look back and forward at the year that was and the year that will be in politics here in Oregon and across the country. First of all, Happy New Year. How are you this morning?
Happy New Year to you. I'm doing well and happy to be here.
Absolutely happy to have you. Now, first, the last bit of political news was a somber one here in 2024. The passing of former President Jimmy Carter just occurred earlier this week. What kind of legacy does Jimmy Carter leave behind across the country and here in the Pacific Northwest?
So Jimmy Carter was the 39th president, and he served between 1977 and 1981. He was a one-term president, and he's mostly known for his response to the Watergate scandal and the hostages situation in Iran. And he was a very he was considered to be, in many respects, a president who struggled in his presidency, but his post-presidency really made up for that. So he won a Nobel Prize. He started the Carter Center, and he left a legacy of helping people through the Habitat for Humanity and his work in delivering medical privileges and goods to people who really needed it across the globe.
Is it common for obviously we don't have many one-term presidents, but is it common for a one-term president to kind of rebuild their legacy in such a way like Jimmy Carter did post-presidency?
So Jimmy Carter, I think, set the standard for the post-presidency for many presidents. He, through the Carter Center, did a lot of work and lived a lot of life after the presidency. Whereas a lot of presidents, they do typically win 2 terms, as well as they die much more quickly, so they have less time. So for presidents in the late 20th century who tended to live longer, he definitely set the standard. In many respects, his presidency is looked poorly upon by some people because of things well out of his control and his approach. So he was a populist president who spoke very bluntly to the people. As a consequence, sometimes, in the case of his Malay speech, that came across as condescending toward Americans. But when you look back at the record, many people really respect what he did as president and see that a lot of the public perceptions around his presidency maybe gave this wrong conception of what he actually did.
And we'll continue to watch as people pay their respects to Jimmy Carter over the next couple of weeks and months, as I'm sure. And now, as we continue to look back at 2024, let's speak specifically about here in Oregon. One of the main political stories that has followed the state really for the past couple of years has been the controversy surrounding Measure 110. This is the decriminalization and recriminalization of public use of drugs here in the state. We saw it reversed, basically, in the past year during the last legislative session. How often do you see a law that is changed, it makes such a drastic impact, and then is reversed pretty quickly thereafter?
Right. So this particular measure, Measure 110, which decriminalized drug use in many respects, was changed in part because of public perceptions of its effect. And so as a scholar, when we're thinking about the effects of laws, it's often really difficult to ascertain the causation of one thing to another, right? And so many people are frustrated by what they see, especially in urban areas like Portland and Eugene, with respect to the homelessness crisis, the opioid epidemic, and that it kind of correlates, or people perceive this to be associated with the decriminalization. Now, because of this perception, I think the strong perception, the state legislature was able to act fast, act quickly in response to this. But I think that it's important to recognize, as we're trying to wade through the waters of the effects of policies, to appreciate the fact that this is drug use, particularly hard drug use, is a highly stigmatized phenomena. And so that played into the responsiveness in terms of the backlash to the law and the change. But it also maybe stymied or muddied up the waters in terms of understanding truly the effects of this particular measure before we could understand
Yeah, does that make it difficult going forward to really know what the impacts were of that change, original change to decriminalize drugs? Did it really get a fair shake to really have an analysis done to know what the impacts were and if it worked or not?
Well, we have the opportunity to analyze this particular legal regime toward laws in the future, but it does take time for scholars to grapple with these thorny questions of causation. So although it was a short period, this does give some scholars opportunity to analyze it.
Sure.
I think it's important to recognize that we don't necessarily have all the facts now about the effects of decriminalization.
I'll check back in 10 years or so. We'll discuss about it once again. Moving on to national level news. We are in the midst of a administration change. You're kind of in this limbo period where you've got a sitting duck president and the Biden administration waiting for the time to run out. We are just weeks away from the inauguration for the Trump administration. What's left for the Biden administration in these last waning days while in the White House?
So here recently, Biden has commuted sentences of people on death row. And pardoned many folks who he believes deserve a pardon. The Senate Democrats, along with Biden, have attempted to push through a bunch of judges. And then here recently, in the waning days, they're trying to release money for Ukraine that was approved by Congress. The Biden administration is. And so what Biden is really concerned about doing is using the remaining time that he has to effectuate the laws and policies that he prefers, and then burnish his legacy. So getting the table set for his evaluation by posterity. And so, he's going to be talking to historians and using the remaining days and time to kind of burnish his legacy. And then lastly, the norm with respect to presidential administrations is that when you are outgoing, you facilitate a peaceful transfer of power from one administration to the next. And so I assume that Biden is working closely with the Trump team to make sure that that's happening.
On the other side of the coin, what's left for the Trump team before Inauguration Day comes?
So the Trump team has a big job to do, right? He's going to assume the presidency. And so he's been hiring his key officials in the cabinet and his advisors. He is lining up his priorities. And we saw a little bit of the debate between some of his key backers, Elon Musk, and some of his more conservative supporters with regard to immigration, H-1B, these kind of very specific technical immigration opportunities for businesses. And there is some debate. And so they're trying to formulate their agenda so that they can come into the White House and hit the ground running, making sure that they can effectuate the kind of policy that they want in their short 4 years.
Absolutely. Dr. James, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us as we kick off the new year.